The soft clicking of keyboard keys filled the modest home office as 23-year-old Dylan Rodriguez carefully reviewed the quarterly financial reports spread across his dual-monitor setup. His small accounting firm, Rodriguez Financial Services, operated out of the converted garage behind his family's two-story house in suburban Phoenix, Arizona. What had started as a desperate attempt to make ends meet after college had slowly grown into a legitimate business serving local small business owners who couldn't afford the big corporate accounting firms downtown. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. Dylan's workspace was immaculate, organized with the precision that had made him successful despite his young age. Filing cabinets lined one wall, each drawer labeled with client names and tax years. His desk held 2 monitors, a high-end calculator, and neat stacks of documents waiting for his attention. The walls displayed his CPA certification, a business license, and several thank-you letters from satisfied clients. This wasn't just an office, it was the foundation of his independence and the proof that hard work could overcome limited resources. The journey to this point hadn't been easy. After graduating with a degree in accounting from Arizona State University, Dylan had struggled to find employment with the major firms. His grades were excellent, but he lacked the connections and internship experience that seemed to matter more than academic achievement. Student loan payments loomed, and his parents, Maria and Carlos Rodriguez, were already stretching their budget to support Dylan's younger sister, 20-year-old Jasmine, who was still in college, rather than burden his family further or accept a minimum wage job unrelated to his field. Dylan had made the bold decision to start his own practice. He'd converted the detached garage into a professional office space, investing his savings in proper lighting, climate control, and security measures. The transformation had taken months of weekend work, but the result was a space that clients could respect and trust with their financial information. His first client had been Mrs. Elena Martinez, an elderly woman who ran a small bakery 3 blocks away. She'd heard about Dylan through his mother, who worked as a cashier at the local grocery store. Mrs. Martinez needed help organizing receipts and filing quarterly taxes, tasks that the big firms considered too small to be profitable. Dylan had spent hours with her, explaining each step and charging fees that fit her modest budget. Word of mouth had gradually brought him more clients. By his second year in business, Dylan was serving 15 small business owners, including a family-owned restaurant, 2 auto repair shops, a landscaping company, and several independent contractors. His reputation was built on personal attention, affordable rates, and absolute discretion regarding his clients' financial information. Many of his clients had become more than customers, they were friends who trusted him with their most sensitive business details. The work was demanding but rewarding. Dylan typically started his days at 7 in the morning, reviewing client files and preparing for appointments. His afternoons were often spent visiting client locations, helping them understand their bookkeeping, or explaining tax implications of business decisions. Evenings were reserved for processing paperwork, updating financial records, and preparing tax documents during busy seasons. Dylan's dedication extended beyond just crunching numbers. He genuinely cared about his clients' success and often provided business advice that went beyond basic accounting services. When Maria Santos, who owned a small catering business, was considering expanding her operation, Dylan had spent an entire weekend helping her create a business plan and financial projections. When Tom Bradley's auto shop was struggling with cash flow, Dylan had worked with him to restructure his payment schedules and identify areas where costs could be reduced. This personal approach had earned Dylan respect in the local business community, but it also meant that he possessed extremely sensitive information about his clients' operations. He knew about struggling marriages affecting family businesses, about cash flow problems that could destroy livelihoods, about tax issues that could result in serious legal consequences. The confidentiality of this information wasn't just professional courtesy, it was absolutely critical to his clients' well-being and his own reputation. Dylan's home office was secured with a deadbolt lock, and he maintained strict protocols about client information. Physical documents were stored in locked filing cabinets, digital files were password protected and backed up to encrypted cloud storage, and he never discussed client matters outside of professional settings. This level of security wasn't just good business practice, it was essential for maintaining the trust that small business owners placed in him. The financial rewards of his business were modest but growing. Dylan was able to cover his student loan payments, contribute to household expenses, and even save a small amount each month. He drove a reliable used Honda Civic and lived simply. But he was proud of his independence and the trajectory of his career. His ultimate goal was to eventually move the business to a commercial office space and perhaps hire an assistant, but for now, the converted garage served his needs perfectly. Dylan's relationship with his family was generally positive, though tensions occasionally arose from the shared living situation. His parents were proud of his entrepreneurial success and respectful of his need for quiet working conditions. They understood that his business required concentration and privacy, and they rarely interrupted him during working hours. His younger sister Jasmine was a different story. She was studying communications at the same university Dylan had attended, but her focus was entirely different. While Dylan had been studious and career-focused, Jasmine was charismatic and social, with dreams of becoming a content creator and influencer. She spent most of her free time creating videos for various social media platforms, particularly Twitch, where she had been building a modest but growing following through gaming streams and lifestyle content. Jasmine's streaming setup occupied a corner of the main house's living room, much to their parents' occasional frustration. Her equipment included multiple cameras, professional lighting, and sound equipment that sometimes created noise issues. Her streaming schedule was erratic, often extending late into the evening, and she had a tendency to get loud and animated during her broadcasts. The contrast between the siblings was stark. Dylan valued privacy, professionalism, and quiet concentration. Jasmine thrived on attention, spontaneity, and public engagement. Dylan's success was built on trust and discretion, while Jasmine's ambitions depended on entertainment value and viral moments. These different approaches to life had coexisted peacefully for the most part, but underlying tensions were beginning to surface. Dylan had noticed that Jasmine seemed to view his business with a mixture of curiosity and dismissal. She occasionally made comments about how boring accounting seemed or questioned why he chose to work with such small clients when he could potentially pursue more glamorous opportunities. These remarks bothered Dylan, but he generally avoided confrontation, focusing instead on his own goals and responsibilities. As Dylan finished reviewing the quarterly reports that Tuesday afternoon, he felt satisfied with his progress. 3. New clients had joined his practice in the past month, and his existing clients were consistently satisfied with his services. The business was stable, growing, and providing him with both financial security and professional fulfillment. He carefully filed the completed reports in their designated folders, locked the filing cabinet, and began shutting down his computer systems for the day. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities, but for now, he was content with the foundation he had built. Dylan had no way of knowing that his carefully constructed professional world was about to be shattered by someone who should have been his strongest supporter. The sound of laughter and animated conversation drifted from the main house, indicating that Jasmine was likely preparing for another streaming session. Dylan locked his office door and headed toward the house for dinner, unaware that his sister's growing desperation for viral content and her fundamental misunderstanding of professional boundaries were about to collide in a way that would change both of their lives forever. Jasmine Rodriguez stood in front of her bedroom mirror, adjusting her ring light for the third time that evening. Her reflection showed a carefully curated version of herself, perfectly applied makeup, trendy crop top, and an expression that she'd practiced countless times to achieve the right balance of approachable and aspirational. At 20 years old, she possessed the kind of natural charisma that had always made her the center of attention in social situations, but translating that magnetism into sustainable online success had proven more challenging than she'd anticipated. Her bedroom walls were covered with vision boards featuring screenshots of successful streamers and influencers, each image representing the lifestyle she desperately wanted to achieve. Expensive cars, designer clothing, luxury vacations, and, most importantly, the validation that came with millions of followers hanging on every word. Jasmine had been streaming on Twitch for 18 months, and while she'd managed to build a following of approximately 12,000 subscribers, her growth had plateaued frustratingly in recent weeks. The numbers told a story that Jasmine didn't want to acknowledge. Her average viewership had dropped from 800 concurrent viewers to just over 400. Her subscriber count hadn't grown meaningfully in 3 months. Most damaging to her self-esteem, several newer streamers who had started after her were now significantly more successful, boasting follower counts that made her own achievements seem insignificant by comparison. Jasmine's content primarily focused on gaming streams, lifestyle vlogs, and what she called real talk sessions where she discussed trending topics and social media drama. Her personality was naturally entertaining, she was quick-witted, opinionated, and unafraid to share controversial takes that generated engagement. However, the streaming landscape was incredibly competitive, and staying relevant required constantly escalating content that pushed boundaries and captured attention in an oversaturated market. The financial pressure was becoming impossible to ignore. While Dylan was building a legitimate business and contributing to household expenses, Jasmine was burning through her savings and relying heavily on their parents' support. Her streaming income was unpredictable, ranging from less than $200 some months to nearly $1,000 during her best periods. The inconsistency made it impossible to plan for the future or achieve the independence she craved. More frustrating still was the constant comparison to other creators who seemed to effortlessly generate viral moments and brand partnerships. Jasmine spent hours analyzing successful streamers, trying to identify the secret formula that separated viral sensations from struggling creators. She'd attempted various strategies: reaction content, collaboration streams, dramatic pranks, and controversial takes on current events, but nothing had produced the breakthrough moment she desperately needed. Her university coursework in communications had introduced her to theories about audience engagement and content strategy, but academic knowledge felt inadequate when faced with the harsh realities of algorithmic promotion and audience retention. Professors discussed media ethics and responsible content creation, concepts that seemed increasingly irrelevant when measured against the success of creators who built their followings through increasingly outrageous and boundary-pushing content. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. Jasmine's streaming setup occupied a significant portion of the family's living room, creating ongoing tension with her parents who struggled to understand why their daughter spent so many hours talking to a camera instead of focusing on traditional career preparation. Her equipment represented a substantial investment: professional cameras, lighting systems, audio equipment, and a gaming computer that had required months of saving and a generous birthday gift from her grandmother. The physical space her streaming operation required was just one source of family friction. Her irregular schedule meant that she was often preparing for or conducting streams during family dinner time, holiday gatherings, or quiet evenings when her parents preferred to relax. The noise generated by her animated streaming persona frequently disrupted the household's peace, particularly when she was reacting to dramatic content or engaging with argumentative viewers in her chat. Dylan's success only intensified Jasmine's frustration with her own situation. While her older brother had managed to build something stable and respected, she felt trapped in a cycle of creating content that generated minimal financial return and uncertain future prospects. The contrast between their approaches to work was stark: Dylan's methodical, professional demeanor versus her improvisational, entertainment-focused strategies, and the results spoke for themselves. What bothered Jasmine most was the perceived unfairness of their different circumstances. Dylan's accounting work seemed straightforward and predictable, requiring skills that could be learned through study and application. Content creation, by contrast, demanded creativity, personality, and the ability to constantly reinvent oneself to maintain audience interest. She felt that her work was more challenging and dynamic, yet Dylan's rewards were more substantial and consistent. The streaming community itself added another layer of pressure and complexity to Jasmine's situation. Online creator spaces were simultaneously supportive and ruthlessly competitive. Fellow streamers offered advice and collaboration opportunities, but they were also direct competitors for the same audience attention and brand partnership opportunities. The community celebrated viral successes while quietly acknowledging that most creators struggled with the same visibility and monetization challenges that Jasmine faced. Jasmine had witnessed numerous examples of creators who had achieved sudden fame through controversial or boundary-pushing content. Drama between creators, leaked private information, public conflicts, and invasive content that violated privacy expectations had all proven capable of generating the kind of viral attention that translated into subscriber growth and financial opportunities. These examples created a template that suggested success required increasingly extreme content strategies. Her most successful streams had consistently been those that featured some element of conflict, drama, or controversy. Reaction streams, where she criticized other creators, sessions where she shared personal family drama, and content that pushed against platform guidelines had all generated higher viewership and engagement than her standard gaming or lifestyle content. The pattern was clear: even if she hadn't fully acknowledged its implications, the algorithm seemed to reward creators who generated strong emotional responses, regardless of whether those responses were positive or negative. Comments, shares, and engagement metrics mattered more than the actual sentiment behind audience reactions. This reality had gradually shifted Jasmine's content strategy toward increasingly provocative approaches, though she hadn't yet crossed lines that would result in serious consequences. Recent weeks had been particularly challenging for Jasmine's confidence and motivation. Several of her attempted viral moments had fallen flat, generating minimal engagement and leaving her feeling desperate for a breakthrough. Her latest gaming streams had attracted smaller audiences than usual, her lifestyle content felt repetitive and unoriginal, and her attempts at commentary on trending topics had been overshadowed by creators with larger platforms and more established voices. The financial pressure was compounding her creative desperation. Credit card bills from streaming equipment purchases were accumulating, her contribution to family expenses was virtually non-existent, and the gap between her lifestyle aspirations and her actual earning capacity was growing wider each month. She'd begun to feel that traditional approaches to content creation weren't sufficient for achieving the success she needed. Jasmine's understanding of professional boundaries and privacy expectations had been shaped primarily by her generation's relationship with social media, where sharing personal information was normalized and transparency was often rewarded with audience engagement. The concept of confidential business information or professional discretion felt abstract and outdated, particularly when measured against the potential for viral content that could transform her career prospects. Her recent conversations with other creators had reinforced the idea that success required taking calculated risks and pushing boundaries that more conservative creators weren't willing to cross. Stories of streamers who had achieved sudden fame through controversial content, leaked information, or dramatic personal revelations had become increasingly appealing as her own traditional strategies continued to produce disappointing results. The evening routine of preparing for streams had become a ritual of mounting desperation masked by carefully applied makeup and practiced enthusiasm. Jasmine knew that her current content strategy wasn't sustainable, that her audience was slowly losing interest, and that her window for achieving meaningful success was narrowing with each passing month. The pressure to find a breakthrough moment was becoming overwhelming. As she prepared for another evening stream, Jasmine found herself considering increasingly desperate strategies for generating the kind of viral moment that could transform her career. The boundary between acceptable content and privacy violations was becoming blurred in her mind, particularly when she considered the wealth of interesting material that surrounded her daily life. Her brother's mysterious business activities, conducted behind locked doors with obviously successful and potentially dramatic clients, represented exactly the kind of authentic, unscripted content that audiences craved. The temptation to incorporate family drama or private information into her content had been growing stronger with each disappointing stream performance. Jasmine rationalized that her family's activities were naturally occurring in shared spaces, that her audience deserved authentic content, and that successful creators often featured family members and personal situations in their streams. The specific nature of Dylan's work and the confidential information he handled seemed like an exciting opportunity rather than a serious privacy concern. What Jasmine failed to fully comprehend was the devastating impact that violating professional confidentiality could have on real people's lives and livelihoods. Her perspective was shaped by social media culture, where privacy was fluid and sharing personal information was rewarded with engagement and attention. The serious legal and ethical implications of exposing confidential business information seemed abstract and distant compared to the immediate pressure she felt to generate viral content that could save her struggling career. Thursday afternoon arrived with an unusual convergence of circumstances that would prove catastrophic for the Rodriguez family. Dylan had scheduled back-to-back client meetings in his garage office, beginning with what promised to be one of the most sensitive consultations of his career. Meanwhile, Jasmine faced a streaming crisis that had pushed her desperation to dangerous new levels. The morning had started normally enough. Dylan reviewed his appointment calendar while sipping coffee in the kitchen, noting that his 2 p.m. meeting with Rebecca Chen would require extra preparation. Mrs. Chen owned Golden Dragon Restaurant, a family establishment that had been struggling with serious financial difficulties following a kitchen fire 6 months earlier. Insurance complications, renovation costs, and lost revenue during the closure had created a perfect storm of financial problems that threatened to destroy 3 generations of family legacy. Rebecca Chen had contacted Dylan 2 weeks earlier, her voice strained with worry as she explained the situation. The restaurant had been her late father's dream, built from nothing when he immigrated from Taiwan in the 1980s. Her mother, now in her 70s, depended on the restaurant's income for her medical expenses and living costs. Rebecca's teenage daughter planned to attend culinary school and eventually take over the family business, making the restaurant's survival crucial for multiple generations. The complexity of the Chen family situation extended far beyond simple bookkeeping. Insurance disputes over the fire damage had left them caught between contractors demanding payment and insurance companies questioning claim details. The IRS had placed liens on the property due to payroll tax issues that arose during the closure period when cash flow disappeared but tax obligations continued. Local creditors were threatening legal action, and the restaurant's reopening had been delayed multiple times due to permit complications and funding shortfalls. Dylan had spent countless hours over the past 2 weeks analyzing the Chen family's financial records, researching tax relief options, and developing strategies that might allow them to restructure their debts and avoid bankruptcy. The case required delicate negotiations with multiple parties, each with competing interests and varying degrees of patience for the family's difficulties. Success would require presenting detailed financial projections, legal documentation, and sensitive personal information about the family's assets and debts. What made the situation particularly delicate was the immigration status complications affecting some family members. Rebecca's mother had never fully mastered English, and certain financial documents contained information about relatives whose legal status in the country was questionable. Dylan understood that any public exposure of these details could result in deportation proceedings that would tear the family apart even if they managed to save the restaurant. The 3 p.m. appointment presented different but equally serious confidentiality concerns. Marcus Thompson owned Thompson Auto Repair, a small garage that served primarily working-class customers who depended on affordable, reliable car maintenance. Marcus had recently discovered that his business partner and longtime friend, James Wheeler, had been systematically embezzling money from the shop for over 2 years. The embezzlement discovery had devastated Marcus both financially and emotionally. James had been his best friend since high school, the best man at his wedding, and godfather to his children. The betrayal cut deeper than the financial damage, though the money stolen was substantial enough to threaten the business's survival. Marcus faced the agonizing choice between filing criminal charges against his former friend or attempting to recover the money through civil proceedings that would be less likely to result in jail time. Dylan's role involved quantifying the exact amount stolen, documenting the methods James had used to hide the theft, and preparing financial statements that could be used in either criminal or civil proceedings. The case files contained detailed evidence of forged invoices, manipulated bank records, and fictitious expense claims that painted a clear picture of deliberate and sustained theft. Additionally, the documents revealed personal information about Marcus's family finances, including his wife's medical bills and his children's college savings accounts that had been depleted to keep the business afloat. The Thompson case files also contained sensitive information about the shop's customers, many of whom were undocumented immigrants who paid cash for services and relied on Marcus's discretion about their vehicle registrations and insurance status. This information, if exposed, could result in deportation proceedings for dozens of families who trusted Marcus with their automotive needs and their safety. As Dylan prepared for these meetings, he followed his standard security protocols with extra attention to detail. Client files were removed from the locked cabinets only when needed, computer screens were positioned away from windows, and his phone was set to silent to prevent interruptions. The garage office door was locked from the inside during consultations, and he had installed soundproofing materials to ensure that conversations couldn't be overheard from outside the converted space. Meanwhile, in the main house, Jasmine was experiencing what she would later describe as the worst week of her streaming career. Her Tuesday evening stream had attracted only 180 concurrent viewers, her lowest number in over 8 months. Comments from her regular audience had become increasingly critical, with several longtime subscribers questioning whether her content was becoming stale and predictable. More devastatingly, 3 of her top financial supporters had announced that they were shifting their donations to other creators who provided more exciting and engaging content. The algorithmic changes to Twitch's discovery system had further reduced Jasmine's visibility to potential new viewers. Her streams were no longer being recommended to users outside her existing follower base, creating a downward spiral where declining viewership led to even less platform promotion. Fellow creators in her Discord servers were reporting similar problems, but several had managed to break through the algorithm's limitations by creating controversial content that generated significant engagement and discussion. Wednesday night's stream had been an even greater disaster. Jasmine had attempted to capitalize on drama between 2 prominent creators, but her commentary had been poorly researched and contained factual errors that her audience quickly identified and criticized. The stream chat had become hostile, with viewers questioning her credibility and suggesting that she should focus on content within her own experience rather than trying to analyze situations she didn't fully understand. The financial implications of her declining performance were becoming impossible to ignore. Jasmine's streaming revenue for the month was on track to be less than $300, her lowest total since she'd started taking content creation seriously. Her credit card debt was approaching $5,000, accumulated through equipment purchases and living expenses that her stream income couldn't support. Her parents had begun asking pointed questions about her future plans and suggesting that she should consider finding traditional employment to supplement her content creation efforts. Thursday morning brought news that pushed Jasmine's desperation to a breaking point. She discovered that Taylor Morrison, a creator who had started streaming 6 months after Jasmine, had just signed a major sponsorship deal with a gaming hardware company. The announcement, shared across Taylor's social media platforms, included photos of expensive equipment, mentions of a five-figure sponsorship payment, and celebration from an audience that dwarfed Jasmine's own following. The comparison was particularly painful because Taylor's initial content had been similar to Jasmine's gaming and lifestyle streams. However, Taylor had gradually shifted toward more provocative content, including streams where she reacted to leaked private messages between other creators, episodes where she shared personal drama from her dating life, and controversial takes on social issues that generated heated discussions in her comment sections. The strategy had worked spectacularly, growing Taylor's audience from a few hundred followers to over 50,000 subscribers in just 4 months. Jasmine spent Thursday morning analyzing Taylor's content strategy, trying to identify specific techniques that could be adapted for her own streams. The pattern was unmistakable. Taylor's most successful content consistently featured authentic drama, real conflicts, and situations where viewers felt they were witnessing genuine, unscripted moments rather than carefully planned entertainment. The audience craved authenticity, even when that authenticity involved privacy violations and personal betrayals. As Jasmine prepared for her Thursday afternoon stream, she found herself in a state of creative desperation that made previously unthinkable options seem reasonable and necessary. Her usual content ideas felt tired and uninspiring compared to the dramatic possibilities that surrounded her daily life. The sounds of Dylan's business activities in the converted garage had always been background noise, but now they represented potential content that could provide the authentic drama her audience demanded. The timing of Dylan's afternoon appointments created what seemed like a perfect opportunity. Jasmine knew that her brother's most important clients visited on Thursday afternoons, and she had overheard enough phone conversations to understand that these meetings involved sensitive business matters that clients preferred to keep confidential. The locked door, the serious tones of conversation, and Dylan's obvious stress about these particular appointments suggested exactly the kind of authentic, high-stakes content that could generate viral interest. Jasmine's streaming setup in the living room was positioned close enough to the garage that careful microphone positioning could potentially capture audio from Dylan's meetings. Her newest camera equipment included directional microphones designed for outdoor streaming that could isolate specific sound sources from background noise. The technical capability existed to create content that would showcase real business drama, authentic conflicts, and the kind of unscripted human emotions that audiences found irresistible. The ethical implications of violating her brother's professional confidentiality seemed abstract compared to the immediate pressure Jasmine felt to create breakthrough content. She rationalized that business meetings in a home environment couldn't reasonably expect complete privacy, that her audience deserved authentic content, and that successful creators often featured family members and domestic situations in their streams. The specific nature of accounting work seemed dry and harmless, unlikely to result in serious consequences for anyone involved. What Jasmine failed to understand was the devastating impact that exposing confidential financial information could have on real families and small businesses. Her perspective was shaped by social media culture, where privacy boundaries were fluid and sharing personal information was rewarded with engagement and financial success. The legal requirements of professional confidentiality, the trust relationships between accountants and clients, and the potential for economic harm seemed like abstract concerns compared to the concrete reality of her failing streaming career. At 1:45 p.m., as Dylan conducted his final preparations for the Chen family meeting, Jasmine made the decision that would destroy both of their lives. She positioned her streaming equipment to capture audio from the garage office, adjusted her camera angles to create the impression of casual, domestic content, and began her afternoon stream with the kind of nervous excitement that audiences often interpreted as authentic enthusiasm. Her stream title read, "Real Talk Thursday, Family Life Behind the Scenes," and her opening remarks suggested that viewers would be getting an unfiltered look at her daily routine and family dynamics. The chat began filling with her regular viewers, many of whom were excited by the promise of more personal, authentic content than her recent gaming-focused streams had provided. As Rebecca Chen's car pulled into the driveway at precisely 2 p.m., Jasmine felt a surge of anticipation that she mistook for creative inspiration. She had no way of understanding that the conversation she was about to broadcast would destroy a family's financial privacy, violate numerous legal and ethical standards, and trigger consequences that would extend far beyond her small audience of live viewers. The collision between Dylan's professional responsibilities and Jasmine's desperate ambition was about to create a viral moment that would change both of their lives forever. Though neither would recognize the full scope of the disaster until it was far too late to prevent the consequences, the first 20 minutes of Jasmine's stream proceeded exactly as she had hoped. Her audience was engaged and growing, with viewer count climbing from her usual 400 to over 650 as word spread through Discord servers that she was doing something different and authentic. The chat was buzzing with excitement about the behind the scenes family content, and several new followers had already subscribed. Her directional microphone was perfectly positioned to capture clear audio from Dylan's office while maintaining the appearance of casual domestic streaming. Rebecca Chen had arrived precisely on schedule, her nervous energy visible even from Jasmine's distant view through the living room window. The middle-aged woman clutched a worn briefcase and moved with the careful deliberation of someone carrying the weight of generational responsibility. Jasmine's audience immediately picked up on the drama, with chat comments like, "Who is that lady?" and "This looks serious." Beginning to flood the stream. What Jasmine's viewers were witnessing, though they didn't yet understand the full context, was a woman whose family's entire legacy hung in the balance of the next few hours. Rebecca Chen represented 3 generations of immigrant dreams, decades of hard work, and the financial survival of elderly parents and ambitious children. The briefcase she carried contained documentation of every asset, debt, and financial obligation that stood between her family and complete economic devastation. Dylan's voice came through clearly as he welcomed Mrs. Chen into his office, his tone professional but warm as he offered her coffee and expressed sympathy for the stress she'd been experiencing. Jasmine's chat immediately latched onto the interaction, with viewers commenting on Dylan's professional voice and speculating about what kind of business meeting was taking place. The viewer count continued climbing as people shared the stream link, drawn by the promise of witnessing authentic, unscripted drama. "Mrs. Chen, I've spent considerable time reviewing your documentation," Dylan's voice carried clearly through Jasmine's audio setup. "The situation is complex, but I believe we have several options that could help your family avoid bankruptcy." The word bankruptcy sent a surge of excitement through Jasmine's chat, with viewers immediately recognizing that they were witnessing real financial crisis rather than manufactured entertainment content. Jasmine felt a moment of uncertainty as she realized the serious nature of the conversation she was broadcasting, but the engagement metrics on her stream were the best she'd seen in months. Super chats were beginning to appear with donations from viewers who were captivated by the authentic drama. Comments like, "This is better than any reality show," and "Your brother sounds like he really knows his stuff," reinforced her belief that she was providing valuable, entertaining content to her audience. Rebecca Chen's voice, strained with worry and exhaustion, began sharing details that would horrify Dylan if he knew they were being broadcast to hundreds of strangers. "The insurance company is saying the fire was caused by electrical problems that existed before our policy started. They're refusing to pay for the kitchen reconstruction, and we've already spent our savings on temporary repairs just to reopen partially." Dylan's response demonstrated the careful professionalism that had built his reputation. Insurance disputes can be challenged, especially when the denial is based on pre-existing conditions that weren't properly documented. "I've prepared a timeline showing that the electrical work was inspected and approved just 6 months before the fire. We can use that documentation to dispute their claim denial." Jasmine's audience was completely absorbed in the unfolding financial drama. The chat was moving too quickly for her to read individual comments, but the engagement metrics showed viewer retention rates far higher than her typical streams. New followers were subscribing in real time, and several viewers had upgraded to paid subscription tiers. The financial success of the stream was already exceeding her monthly averages, creating a powerful incentive to continue despite her growing awareness of the conversation's sensitive nature. The discussion in Dylan's office shifted to even more delicate territory as Rebecca Chen began explaining the tax complications that threatened to destroy her family even if the insurance dispute was resolved. "The IRS placed liens on our property because we couldn't pay payroll taxes during the closure. My mother doesn't understand why the government is threatening to take the building that my father spent his whole life working to own." Dylan's response revealed both his expertise and his genuine concern for the family's welfare. "The IRS has hardship provisions that can suspend collection activities for families experiencing documented financial emergencies. I've prepared Form 911 applications that should provide temporary relief while we negotiate a payment plan that your family can actually afford." What Dylan couldn't know was that his careful explanation of tax relief strategies was being heard not just by his client, but by hundreds of strangers who were treating the family's financial crisis as entertainment. Jasmine's chat had begun making jokes about the family's situation, with comments like, "Just don't pay taxes LOL," and "Immigration drama incoming," that demonstrated the audience's complete disconnect from the real human consequences of the information being shared. The conversation took an even more disturbing turn as Rebecca Chen began discussing the immigration status complications that made her family's situation particularly precarious. "My mother's English is still limited, and some of our relatives who work in the restaurant don't have proper documentation. We're afraid that any government attention could result in investigations that would destroy our family even if we save the business. Jasmine felt a cold realization that she was broadcasting information that could genuinely harm innocent people, but the stream was performing better than anything she'd ever created. The viewer count had reached over 900, her highest ever, and the financial donations were approaching $200 in super chats. Several viewers had begun screen recording the stream, and clip sharing on social media was driving even more traffic to her channel. Dylan's voice carried the weight of professional responsibility as he addressed Mrs. Chen's immigration concerns. Your family's legal status is protected by attorney-client privilege even though I'm an accountant. However, we need to be extremely careful about how we structure any debt negotiations to minimize government scrutiny. I've identified several strategies that should allow your family to resolve the financial issues without triggering immigration investigations. The chat had begun taking screenshots of the conversation details, with some viewers expressing excitement about sharing the exclusive drama on other platforms. Comments like, "Someone needs to clip this," and "This is going viral for sure," made it clear that the private financial information was spreading beyond Jasmine's immediate audience in real-time. As the meeting progressed, Dylan began sharing specific financial strategies that revealed intimate details about the Chen family's assets, debts, and personal circumstances. Your mother's Social Security income can be protected from creditors, and your daughter's college savings account can be restructured to prevent seizure. The restaurant building itself has enough equity to secure a consolidation loan, but we'll need to be careful about the timing to avoid additional tax complications. Rebecca Chen's emotional response to Dylan's recommendations was heartbreaking in its vulnerability. "You're giving us hope for the first time in months. My mother has been so worried that she's barely sleeping. She keeps saying that my father is disappointed in us for not being able to protect what he built." Jasmine's audience was witnessing genuine human suffering and treating it as content for their entertainment. The disconnect between the family's real crisis and the chat's casual commentary created a disturbing contrast that Jasmine was beginning to recognize but felt powerless to address without destroying the most successful stream of her career. The technical quality of her audio capture meant that every detail of the financial consultation was being preserved and shared. Viewers were learning about specific bank account numbers, creditor negotiations, insurance claim amounts, and legal strategies that were meant to remain completely confidential. The violation of professional privilege was comprehensive and devastating. Though its full impact wouldn't be understood for several hours. Dylan's voice carried renewed confidence as he outlined a comprehensive recovery plan for the Chen family. "I believe we can resolve the insurance dispute within 60 days, negotiate payment plans that will remove the tax liens within 6 months, and restructure your debt obligations to make the restaurant profitable again. Your family's American dream isn't over, it just needs some professional guidance to get back on track." The irony was devastating. Dylan was providing exactly the kind of professional service that had built his reputation and helped numerous families overcome financial crises. His expertise, discretion, and genuine concern for his clients' welfare represented the best aspects of professional service. Meanwhile, his sister was destroying that reputation and violating every principle of confidentiality that made his work possible. As the Chen meeting concluded and Rebecca Chen prepared to leave, Jasmine's chat was buzzing with excitement about the dramatic content they'd witnessed. Comments like, "That was better than Netflix," and "Your brother is actually really good at his job," mixed with more disturbing reactions like, "Someone should tell immigration about those workers," and "I bet there's more drama with the next client." The viewer count had stabilized at over 850, representing Jasmine's most successful stream ever. The financial metrics were equally impressive, with donations and new subscriptions generating more revenue in 2 hours than she typically earned in an entire month. The success was intoxicating and addictive, creating powerful incentives to continue the privacy violations despite her growing awareness of their serious implications. Dylan's 3 p.m. appointment with Marcus Thompson arrived just as Rebecca Chen was leaving, creating a seamless transition that kept Jasmine's audience engaged and eager for the next dramatic revelation. Marcus Thompson appeared even more stressed than Mrs. Chen, his body language suggesting someone wrestling with decisions that would affect not just his business but his personal relationships and moral principles. The handoff between clients was professionally handled by Dylan, who escorted Mrs. Chen to her car before welcoming Marcus into his office. Jasmine's audience watched this transition with the excitement of viewers anticipating the next episode of a compelling drama series, completely unaware that they were witnessing real people facing genuine crises that could destroy their lives and livelihoods. As Marcus Thompson settled into Dylan's office and began sharing his story of betrayal and embezzlement, Jasmine realized that she was about to broadcast even more sensitive information to her growing audience. The viewer count was approaching 1,000 concurrent viewers, a milestone she'd never achieved, and the engagement metrics suggested that her channel was experiencing the kind of viral growth that could transform her entire career. The moment of truth had arrived. Jasmine could end the stream, protecting her brother's professional integrity and his client's privacy, or she could continue broadcasting and potentially achieve the breakthrough success that had eluded her for months. The choice would define not just her streaming career but her character and her relationship with her family forever. The first clips from Jasmine's stream began appearing on Twitter within minutes of her broadcast ending. A viewer named @TechBroTyler had been screen recording the entire session and immediately began posting 30-second segments with captions like, "Girl accidentally streams her brother's confidential business meetings," and "This accountant is about to get destroyed." The clips featured the most dramatic moments from Rebecca Chen's consultation, complete with subtitles highlighting the immigration concerns and financial details that viewers found most shocking. @TechBroTyler's Twitter account had 15,000 followers. Primarily other Twitch viewers and content creators who were always hungry for fresh drama. His first clip garnered 500 retweets within the first hour, each share spreading the Chen family's private financial information to new audiences who had no context for the serious nature of the violations they were witnessing. The Twitter algorithm, designed to promote engaging content regardless of its ethical implications, began recommending the clips to users interested in drama, business content, and immigration-related discussions. Meanwhile, Jasmine was experiencing the highest streaming metrics of her career. Her follower count had jumped from 12,000 to over 18,000 during the 3-hour broadcast, and her subscriber revenue for the day had exceeded $300 in direct donations. The rush of success was intoxicating, validating months of struggle and suggesting that she had finally discovered the content strategy that could sustain her career. Comments from new followers praised her for providing authentic content and real drama instead of fake gaming reactions. The second wave of viral spread began when clips reached TikTok through users who followed both @TechBroTyler's Twitter account and various drama-focused TikTok creators. @DramaQueenDiana, who specialized in exposing social media controversies, posted a reaction video that reached 50,000 views within 2 hours. Her video featured her dramatically reacting to the audio of Rebecca Chen discussing her family's immigration concerns, complete with shocked facial expressions and commentary about streamers going too far for content. @DramaQueenDiana's audience was significantly younger and more prone to sharing viral content across multiple platforms. Her followers began creating their own reaction videos, remixing the audio from Dylan's consultation with trending sounds, and sharing the clips to Instagram, Stories and Snapchat. Each platform's algorithm treated the content as engaging material worthy of broader distribution, exponentially expanding the reach of information that should have remained completely confidential. By Thursday evening, the clips had been viewed over 200,000 times across various platforms. The Chen family's personal financial crisis, immigration vulnerabilities, and business struggles had become entertainment for thousands of strangers who felt no connection to the real people affected by the privacy violations. Comments ranged from jokes about immigrant restaurant drama to more serious discussions about professional ethics, but the common thread was treating the family's suffering as content for public consumption. The third wave of viral expansion occurred when larger content creators began featuring the clips in their own reaction videos. @Business Brother Breakdown, a YouTube channel with 400,000 subscribers that specialized in analyzing business disasters, posted a 20-minute video titled "Accountant's Sister Destroys His Practice in One Stream." The video featured detailed analysis of Dylan's advice to Mrs. Chen, critique of Jasmine's streaming ethics, and speculation about the legal consequences both siblings might face. @Business Brother Breakdown's audience was older and more professionally oriented than typical social media users. Many viewers worked in accounting, legal services, or small business management, and they immediately recognized the severity of the confidentiality violations they were witnessing. Comments on the video began identifying specific ethical standards that had been violated, professional organizations that should be notified, and potential legal consequences for Dylan's practice. The professional community's reaction was swift and devastating. The Arizona Society of Certified Public Accountants received 7 formal complaints about Dylan's practice before Friday morning, each filed by viewers who had seen the viral clips and believed that he had deliberately allowed confidential client information to be broadcast. The complaints triggered automatic ethics investigations that would require Dylan to provide detailed explanations of the incidents and could result in suspension or revocation of his professional license. Local business owners who had been considering hiring Dylan's services began reconsidering their decisions after seeing the viral clips. Maria Santos, who owned the catering business Dylan had helped expand, received calls from friends asking whether her financial information had ever been exposed during her consultations. Tom Bradley, whose auto shop's embezzlement case Dylan had handled, worried that his customers would lose trust in his business if they learned about the financial investigations he'd been conducting. The immigration enforcement implications were particularly terrifying for affected families. Rebecca Chen's relatives who worked at the restaurant without proper documentation learned about the viral clips through community networks and immediately began making plans to leave the state. The detailed discussion of their employment status that had been broadcast to thousands of viewers created genuine fear that immigration authorities would use the information to initiate deportation proceedings. By Friday morning, the original stream clips had been viewed over 500,000 times across all platforms. Local news outlets in Phoenix had picked up the story, framing it as an example of social media ethics gone wrong and the dangers of oversharing private information online. Channel 12's morning show featured a segment titled, "When Streaming Goes Too Far," that included interviews with business ethics experts and privacy law attorneys who explained the serious legal implications of the violations. The news coverage brought the story to audiences who didn't typically engage with social media drama but were concerned about professional standards and privacy rights. Local business associations began discussing whether they should issue warnings about Dylan's practice, and several of his existing clients called to express concerns about their own information security. The professional damage was spreading faster than Dylan could contain it, even though he remained unaware of the full scope of the crisis. Jasmine's initial excitement about her streaming success began to fade as she realized the broader implications of the viral content. Friends from college started texting her about seeing clips of her family's private business online, and several expressed shock that she had broadcast such sensitive information without permission. Her parents received calls from neighbors who had seen local news coverage and were asking questions about Dylan's business practices and their family's private affairs. The legal community's response was particularly alarming for anyone who understood professional liability issues. The State Bar of Arizona received complaints alleging that Dylan's practice violated attorney-client privilege principles that also applied to accounting relationships. Insurance companies that provided professional liability coverage for accountants began reviewing Dylan's policy to determine whether the privacy violations would void his coverage for any resulting lawsuits. Rebecca Chen's family discovered the viral clips when a customer at their restaurant mentioned seeing their financial problems discussed online. Mrs. Chen, Dylan's elderly client who spoke limited English, was devastated to learn that her personal immigration concerns and financial struggles had been broadcast to thousands of strangers. The family immediately contacted Dylan to demand explanations and began researching legal options for addressing the privacy violations. Marcus Thompson, whose embezzlement consultation had also been partially broadcast, learned about the clips through his auto shop employees who had seen them shared in local Facebook groups. The exposure of his business's financial vulnerabilities and the details about his former partner's theft created additional complications for his ongoing legal proceedings and damaged relationships with customers who now questioned his business management capabilities. The ripple effects extended to Dylan's other clients as news of the privacy violations spread through professional networks. Small business owners who had trusted him with their most sensitive financial information began questioning whether their own consultations had been compromised. Several clients scheduled emergency meetings to review what information had been shared and to discuss whether they needed to take protective measures against potential exposure. Friday afternoon brought the first formal legal consequences when Rebecca Chen's family filed complaints with both the Better Business Bureau and the Arizona Department of Financial Institutions. Their attorney argued that Dylan's failure to secure his consultation space against unauthorized recording constituted gross negligence in protecting client confidentiality. The complaints requested investigations into his professional practices and demanded compensation for damages resulting from the privacy violations. The social media platforms themselves began responding to the viral spread with content moderation actions that came too late to prevent the widespread damage. Twitch issued a temporary suspension of Jasmine's account pending investigation of privacy violations, though the original stream had already been downloaded and preserved by numerous viewers. YouTube began removing reaction videos that featured extended clips of the confidential consultations, but takedown requests couldn't address the thousands of shorter clips that had been shared across other platforms. Local competitor accounting firms began capitalizing on the scandal by offering services specifically designed to address privacy concerns that Dylan's practice could no longer credibly guarantee. Marketing materials began appearing that emphasized secure consultation environments, strict confidentiality protocols, and professional standards that would prevent the kind of violations that had destroyed Dylan's reputation. The financial implications for both siblings were becoming clear by Friday evening. Jasmine's Twitch account suspension meant that she couldn't access the revenue from her viral stream, and advertising sponsors began questioning whether they wanted to be associated with content creators who violated privacy expectations. Dylan faced the loss of existing clients, potential lawsuits from affected families, professional sanctions that could end his career, and the collapse of the business he had spent years building. Community reactions varied widely, reflecting different perspectives on privacy rights, family loyalty, and professional responsibility. Some social media users defended Jasmine as a young creator who had made an honest mistake, while others condemned her actions as deliberate exploitation of vulnerable families for entertainment value. Business communities expressed outrage at the violations of professional standards, while content creator communities debated whether the incident represented broader problems with social media incentive structures. The viral spread had achieved exactly what Jasmine had hoped for in terms of visibility and engagement, but the consequences were devastating for everyone involved. The authentic drama that audiences craved had come at the cost of real families' privacy, professional reputations, and financial security. The digital age's capacity for amplifying both success and destruction was being demonstrated in the most personal and painful way possible for the Rodriguez family and the clients whose trust had been violated. Monday morning arrived with an unexpected development that would fundamentally alter the trajectory of the Rodriguez family crisis. Sarah Mitchell, a senior partner at Mitchell & Associates, one of Phoenix's most respected business law firms, had spent her weekend reviewing the viral clips that her teenage daughter had shown her Friday evening. Unlike the thousands of viewers who had treated the content as entertainment, Sarah recognized immediately that she was witnessing something far more significant than social media drama. Sarah's 25 years of experience in business law had taught her to identify genuine professional competence, and Dylan's handling of the Chen family consultation demonstrated expertise that impressed her deeply. Despite the devastating privacy violations caused by his sister's streaming, Dylan's advice had been technically sound, ethically appropriate, and delivered with exactly the kind of compassionate professionalism that Sarah valued in potential business partners. Mitchell & Associates had been searching for months to identify a qualified accountant who could serve as an in-house consultant for their small business clients. The firm's practice focused primarily on helping immigrant entrepreneurs, family-owned businesses, and working-class individuals navigate complex legal and financial challenges. Their clients needed exactly the kind of personalized, culturally sensitive service that Dylan had provided to Rebecca Chen, but finding professionals who combined technical expertise with genuine empathy had proven surprisingly difficult. Sarah's decision to contact Dylan represented a calculated professional risk that demonstrated her confidence in character assessment. She understood that hiring someone whose reputation had been damaged by viral controversy could reflect poorly on her firm's judgment. However, she also recognized that the privacy violations were entirely outside Dylan's control, and that his professional response to the crisis would reveal more about his character than the social media scandal that had destroyed his independent practice. The phone call that changed Dylan's life came at 8:30 a.m. Monday morning, just as he was preparing to meet with yet another client who wanted to discuss terminating their business relationship. Sarah's voice was direct and professional as she introduced herself and explained that she had reviewed the viral clips not as entertainment, but as an inadvertent showcase of exactly the kind of professional competence her firm needed. Mr. Rodriguez, I'm calling because your handling of the Chen family consultation was exemplary, despite the unfortunate circumstances surrounding its public exposure, Sarah explained. My firm has been seeking an in-house accounting consultant who can provide the kind of personalized service you demonstrated. I'd like to discuss whether you might be interested in transitioning from independent practice to a position with our legal team. Dylan's initial response was stunned silence. After 3 days of dealing with client defections, professional complaints, and the collapse of his carefully built reputation, the possibility of employment with a respected law firm seemed almost impossible to believe. His independent practice was effectively finished, but Sarah's offer represented not just employment, but validation that his professional skills retained value despite the viral scandal. The position Sarah described was specifically designed around Dylan's demonstrated strengths in working with vulnerable small business owners and immigrant families. Mitchell & Associates' client base included many businesses facing exactly the kinds of complex challenges that Dylan had helped navigate throughout his independent career. The firm needed someone who could provide accounting services while understanding the cultural sensitivities and legal vulnerabilities that made their clients' situations particularly delicate. Sarah's offer included a starting salary significantly higher than Dylan's independent practice had generated, comprehensive benefits that he couldn't afford as a solo practitioner, and the professional protection that came with working under a law firm's professional liability coverage. More importantly, the position would allow him to continue serving the same kinds of clients he'd always focused on, while providing the security and resources that would make his work more effective and sustainable, the conversation revealed. Sarah's sophisticated understanding of both Dylan's professional capabilities and the unfair circumstances that had destroyed his independent practice. Confidentiality violations are serious matters, but they don't reflect on your technical competence or professional judgment, she explained. My evaluation is based on the quality of advice you provided, not the unauthorized broadcast of that advice. Tuesday brought the first signs that public opinion was beginning to shift in ways that neither Dylan nor Jasmine had anticipated. Dr. Amanda Chen, Rebecca's daughter who was studying business ethics at ASU, had spent the weekend researching the legal and ethical implications of the privacy violations that had affected her family. Her analysis led her to conclusions that differed significantly from the social media narrative that had dominated the story's initial viral spread. Amanda's blog post, titled, "My Family's Privacy Was Violated, but the Real Story is More Complex," provided the first detailed response from someone who had been directly affected by Jasmine's stream. Her writing was measured and thoughtful, acknowledging the genuine harm caused by the privacy violations while also recognizing the professional competence Dylan had demonstrated during their family's consultation. The accountant who was helping my family provided exactly the kind of expert, compassionate service that immigrant businesses need, Amanda wrote. His advice was technically sound and culturally sensitive. The violation of our privacy was devastating, but it was caused by his sister's poor judgment, not his professional practices. Destroying his career for someone else's mistakes would be unjust and would deprive other families of the kind of help we desperately needed. Amanda's perspective began attracting attention from viewers who had previously focused solely on the sensational aspects of the viral story. Her post was shared by immigration advocacy groups, small business organizations, and professional associations that recognize the importance of distinguishing between professional competence and family members' inappropriate actions. The narrative was beginning to include voices that understood the real-world implications of the services Dylan provided. The immigration law community's response proved particularly significant for reshaping public understanding of the crisis. Maria Rodriguez, a prominent immigration attorney who shared Dylan's surname but was not related to his family, wrote a detailed analysis explaining why the privacy violations had created genuine dangers for vulnerable families while also acknowledging that Dylan's advice had been technically excellent and ethically appropriate. Confidentiality violations in immigration-related matters can have life-threatening consequences, Maria Rodriguez wrote in her widely shared LinkedIn post. However, the quality of professional advice provided in this case was exemplary. This accountant understood both the financial and legal complexities that immigrant families face, and his recommendations demonstrated exactly the kind of expertise our community needs. Punishing him for his sister's actions would be counterproductive and unjust. Professional accounting organizations began conducting more nuanced analyses of the viral clips, focusing on the technical quality of Dylan's advice rather than the circumstances of its unauthorized broadcast. The Arizona Society of CPAs appointed a special committee to review the ethics complaints that had been filed, and their preliminary findings suggested that Dylan had violated no professional standards in his actual consultation practices. Wednesday brought unexpected support from an influential voice in the business ethics community. Professor Jennifer Walsh, who taught professional responsibility at ASU's business school, had been using the viral clips as teaching materials for her graduate students. Her analysis focused on the distinction between professional competence and family members' inappropriate actions, and her students' research project examining the case had generated insights that supported Dylan's professional reputation. This case study demonstrates the importance of evaluating professional conduct based on actual professional actions, not on unauthorized disclosure of those actions, Professor Walsh explained in her interview with local business media. The accountant's advice was technically sound, ethically appropriate, and delivered with admirable sensitivity to his client's cultural and legal vulnerabilities. Academic analysis supports the conclusion that his professional practices met or exceeded industry standards. The business law community's support began creating opportunities for Dylan that extended beyond Sarah Mitchell's job offer. Other legal firms contacted him about consulting opportunities, and several professional organizations invited him to speak about best practices for serving immigrant and small business clients. The viral scandal that had initially destroyed his reputation was paradoxically creating visibility for his professional expertise. Thursday brought developments that would prove crucial for both Dylan's professional rehabilitation and Jasmine's reckoning with the consequences of her actions. The Arizona Department of Financial Institutions completed its preliminary investigation of the ethics complaints filed against Dillon's practice. Their findings, released in a public report, concluded that Dillon had violated no professional standards and that the confidentiality breaches were entirely the result of unauthorized third-party actions. Our investigation found no evidence of professional misconduct by Mr. Rodriguez, the report stated. The privacy violations resulted from unauthorized recording by a family member, not from deficient professional practices. Mr. Rodriguez's consultation methods, advice quality, and client service standards met or exceeded professional requirements. The official vindication provided Dillon with the documentation needed to rebuild his professional reputation and pursue new opportunities. Sarah Mitchell's job offer was no longer his only option. It was his preferred choice among multiple possibilities that had emerged as the business community recognized the unfairness of destroying his career for his sister's mistakes. Meanwhile, Jasmine faced the devastating realization that her viral success had come at costs she was only beginning to understand. The temporary suspension of her Twitch account had become permanent after platform administrators reviewed the privacy violations and determined that they constituted serious breaches of community standards. Her appeals were rejected, and her entire streaming presence on Twitch was eliminated. Other platforms began restricting Jasmine's content creation opportunities as news of the privacy violations spread through creator community networks. YouTube demonetized her channel, Instagram restricted her account's reach, and TikTok flagged her content as potentially harmful. The viral success that had initially seemed like a career breakthrough had instead destroyed her ability to pursue content creation on major platforms. The financial consequences for Jasmine extended beyond lost platform access. Legal expenses for defending against potential lawsuits were mounting, and her family faced the possibility of significant damages payments to the families whose privacy had been violated. The $300 in streaming revenue from her viral broadcast would be dwarfed by the legal costs and financial liabilities her actions had created. By Friday, the transformation was complete. Dillon had accepted Sarah Mitchell's job offer and was preparing to begin work at one of Phoenix's most respected business law firms. His new position would allow him to serve the same kinds of vulnerable clients he'd always focused on, while providing better compensation and professional security than his independent practice had to offer. The viral scandal that had initially destroyed Dillon's career had ultimately created opportunities for professional advancement that might not have been possible through traditional career progression. His demonstrated expertise under pressure, combined with his principled response to the crisis, had impressed legal professionals and created visibility within professional communities that valued competence and character over social media popularity. Jasmine's journey led in the opposite direction. Her desperate pursuit of viral success had achieved exactly what she'd hoped for in terms of visibility and engagement, but the consequences had destroyed her ability to continue content creation while creating massive financial and legal liabilities for her family. The authentic drama that audiences craved had come at costs that far exceeded any potential benefits. 6 months after the viral incident that had shattered the Rodriguez family's quiet suburban life, Dillon Rodriguez walked through the polished corridors of Mitchell & Associates carrying a briefcase filled with success stories that validated Sarah Mitchell's faith in his professional character. His transition from independent practitioner to senior accounting consultant had exceeded everyone's expectations, including his own. The law firm's immigrant and small business clients had embraced his services enthusiastically, recognizing in him someone who understood both their financial challenges and their cultural vulnerabilities. Dillon's new role had allowed him to impact far more families than his independent practice ever could have reached. Working within the law firm's comprehensive service model, he could provide accounting guidance while collaborating with attorneys who specialized in immigration law, business formation, and regulatory compliance. The integration of services meant that clients like the Chen family could receive coordinated professional support that addressed all aspects of their complex situations, rather than navigating multiple disconnected service providers. The Chen family's restaurant had not only survived their financial crisis but had become one of Phoenix's most celebrated immigrant success stories. Rebecca Chen regularly credited Dillon's financial guidance with saving 3 generations of family legacy, and the restaurant now employed 15 people, including several relatives whose immigration status had been stabilized through the coordinated legal and financial strategies that Dillon had helped develop. The privacy violations that had initially threatened their safety had ultimately connected them with comprehensive professional services that secured their long-term stability. Marcus Thompson's auto repair shop had similarly benefited from the expanded resources available through Dillon's new position. The embezzlement case had been resolved through civil proceedings that recovered most of the stolen funds while avoiding criminal prosecution that would have destroyed his former partners. Family. Dylan's financial analysis had been crucial in structuring a restitution agreement that allowed both families to move forward without the devastating consequences of criminal conviction. The professional vindication Dylan had experienced extended far beyond his individual career advancement. The Arizona Society of CPAs had used his case as a catalyst for developing new guidelines distinguishing between professional misconduct and unauthorized disclosure of professional services. The guidelines established clear standards that protected accountants from liability for family members' inappropriate actions while maintaining strict confidentiality requirements for actual professional practices. Dylan's experience had also influenced academic discussions about professional ethics in the digital age. Business schools throughout Arizona began incorporating his case into their curricula as an example of how traditional confidentiality principles applied to modern privacy challenges. Professor Jennifer Walsh's research on the case had been published in the Journal of Professional Ethics, establishing Dylan's handling of the crisis as a model for maintaining professional integrity under unprecedented circumstances. The broader legal community had embraced Dylan's story is evidence that character and competence could overcome even the most damaging circumstances when supported by principled colleagues who prioritized substance over appearances. Sarah Mitchell's decision to hire him despite the viral controversy had been praised by professional organizations as an example of leadership that valued actual qualifications over social media reputation. Mitchell and Associates had experienced significant business growth partly attributed to the positive publicity generated by their principled hiring decision. Prospective clients, particularly immigrant families and small business owners, sought out the firm specifically because they wanted to work with professionals who had demonstrated both technical expertise and ethical character under pressure. The firm's reputation for supporting employees who faced unfair circumstances had also attracted talented professionals who valued working for employers with strong moral principles. Dylan's speaking engagements at professional conferences had become increasingly frequent as organizations sought his perspective on maintaining client service standards in an era of digital privacy challenges. His presentations focused on practical strategies for protecting confidential information while serving vulnerable populations, and his first-hand experience with privacy violations made his recommendations particularly credible and valuable. The immigration law community had adopted Dylan's case as a rallying point for protecting professional service providers who served undocumented communities. Legal advocacy organizations argued that destroying professionals' careers for family members' mistakes would reduce the already limited pool of qualified service providers willing to work with vulnerable populations. Dylan's successful career recovery demonstrated that the legal community could distinguish between professional competence and family dysfunction. Meanwhile, Jasmine's trajectory had continued in the opposite direction, serving as a cautionary tale about the true costs of viral fame achieved through privacy violations. Her permanent bans from major streaming platforms had effectively ended her content creation career, and her attempts to rebuild her online presence on smaller platforms had failed to generate sustainable income or audience engagement. The legal consequences of her actions had proven far more expensive and complicated than she had initially understood. The Chen family's lawsuit seeking damages for immigration-related anxiety and business disruption had been settled out of court for an amount that would require Jasmine to make monthly payments for several years. Additional lawsuits from other affected parties were still pending, creating ongoing financial obligations that would impact her life for the foreseeable future. Jasmine's experience had become a frequently cited example in discussions about social media ethics and the responsibilities of content creators. Digital citizenship curricula in high schools and colleges began featuring her case as an illustration of how the pursuit of viral success could destroy real people's lives and create lasting legal and financial consequences for creators who violated privacy expectations. The content creator community had largely distanced itself from Jasmine's actions, recognizing that defending privacy violations would damage the entire industry's reputation and credibility. Major creators began incorporating explicit discussions about consent and privacy into their content, using Jasmine's case as an example of boundaries that should never be crossed regardless of potential engagement benefits. Platform policies had been strengthened in response to the viral incident, with Twitch, YouTube, and other services implementing stricter guidelines about broadcasting private conversations without consent. The policy changes included mandatory training modules for creators about privacy rights and legal consequences of violating confidentiality expectations. Educational institutions had embraced the Rodriguez family story as a comprehensive case study in digital ethics, professional responsibility, and family dynamics. Business ethics courses examined Dylan's professional response to the crisis. Communication programs analyzed the viral spread of private information, and psychology departments studied the family relationship dynamics that had created the underlying tensions. The broader cultural impact of the incident extended to discussions about family loyalty, professional boundaries, and the responsibilities that came with social media influence. Online communities debated whether family members had obligations to protect each other's professional interests and whether the pursuit of individual success justified violating relatives' privacy and professional standards. Local business communities had rallied around Dylan's story as evidence that Phoenix valued professional competence and ethical character over social media popularity. The Chamber of Commerce had featured his career recovery in promotional materials highlighting the city's support for immigrant entrepreneurs and small business service providers. Immigration advocacy organizations had used Dylan's case to demonstrate the importance of protecting professional service providers who served vulnerable communities. They argued that stability and confidentiality in professional relationships were essential for encouraging undocumented residents to seek legitimate assistance with legal and financial challenges. The technology industry had begun examining the incident as an example of how algorithmic promotion of engaging content could amplify harmful behavior and create unintended consequences for innocent parties. Some platforms started implementing human review processes for content that appeared to involve private conversations or confidential information. As Dylan reflected on the year that had transformed his career and his family's relationships, he recognized that the crisis had ultimately revealed truths about character, priorities, and values that might have remained hidden under normal circumstances. The professional success he had achieved working with Mitchell and Associates provided greater security and impact than his independent practice ever could have offered, while the viral scandal had connected him with colleagues and clients who valued exactly the qualities that made his work meaningful. The lesson that emerged from the Rodriguez family's experience was both simple and profound. In an age where digital technology could instantly amplify both achievements and mistakes, character and competence remained the most reliable foundations for long-term success. The viral moment that had initially seemed to destroy Dylan's career had ultimately showcased exactly the professional qualities that principled colleagues and clients valued most. Jasmine's story served as an equally important reminder that authentic success required building genuine value rather than simply capturing attention, and that the pursuit of viral fame through privacy violations carried costs that far exceeded any temporary benefits. The digital age had created new opportunities for both achievement and destruction, but the fundamental principles of respect, integrity, and professional competence remained as relevant as ever. The Rodriguez family's experience had become a lasting testament to the power of character to overcome even the most damaging circumstances, while also demonstrating the devastating consequences that could result from prioritizing personal ambition over family loyalty and professional ethics. Their story would continue influencing discussions about digital responsibility, professional integrity, and family relationships for years to come. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.